All right, we need Twitter data, and Twitter doesn't quite make it easy for us mortals that are not amazing developers. So we need another solution. Most people in corporations and things like that use social media web tools that are third-party approved vendors for Twitter. My favorite absolutely out there is Rival IQ, and I may do another video on that later. But for now, I just want all of the tweet history of a particular profile account on Twitter so that I can analyze it, and I don't want to pay any money, and I also don't have any development skills. So we are going to use this amazing tool called Wayscript, which you can take little modules of things and have them run together very simply with a drag and drop and a couple of options. And one of them is a Twitter module. So we can easily create a new script and call that Tweeter test. It's loading our script. It may take a little bit longer than running something like a desktop app. It is doing quite a lot in the browser here, and we are thankful they have this service. So here is our little main flow. We don't need a trigger in this case. We're just going to run this manually. I'm going to click add a step, then TW, and you can see some familiar faces. We're going to rock it out with Twitter. So it is adding that right now. Here is the Twitter module. So on the left, you'll see some new options. If you haven't logged into this before, and this is your first time, it'll have you authenticate to your account so you have access to it. So I'm already authenticated there. Now, what would we like to do? Those are the options for pulling in data. We are going to get the tweet history of a user. It's going to take a second to update our little module in the script here. So the options change based on what you would like to do. We can choose to include retweets or not. I'm going to say no for this case. And then you choose the username of the profile, your @ that you want to. I'm talking and writing at the same time. Finger metrics. And we want to actually let that update, pull the JSON data, which JSON data is the structure of data that developers use to store everything in a way that's convenient for them. It's a little bit different than the table data you may be used to in things like Excel or a CSV file. It's stored a little bit differently, but Excel can actually handle that fairly well in recent versions, and Tableau certainly can as well. So we should be good to go with our Twitter steps. Everything there looks good. Now we're going to add the JSON step as well. So now that we have the data, we need to save the data. So in this case, this is just a little file thing, and the default was read. We want to write a file. So it'll give you the option in a second here to choose an existing file that you have to write over, or you can create a new file. So we can create a new file and call it tweeter test file.json. So we're going to create that file, and that should populate in the drop down for us. And now you need to write a variable to it. So you don't want a blank file. Hopefully that's saved. Okay, cool. So here we go. The only variable that we pulled in from Twitter there was all of the JSON data. You can bring in individual fields if you would like in a different way. This is just bringing everything in. And so that, as long as we have the file and the variable there, we should be able to run our new script. It ran, it pulled the posts, it wrote the posts, and we should be good to go. So because this is a JSON file, we can then go to our profile and settings. And so remember, this is called tweetertestfile.json. So here we're able to look at manage files. And there you go. So we have that. We can click the download button. And there we go. Now this is what it looks like. in Notepad. So not very readable, but that's okay. We are good to go there. We can now go into Tableau, connect to data. JSON file is an option. And tweeter test file was the latest we had. And it's not as easy as a table. It separates out here user mentions for some reason, but it pulls in this schema, which is a description or setup of how a database uh, arranges its different fields of data. And we're going to click OK. So now we have our data in Tableau. You will notice date came in as a string, so you can tell that as ABC instead of a date. So this interesting date format is actually a little bit more complicated than you'd think, and Tableau is not great at recognizing it. We'll get to that in a second, but you can definitely bring in all of that content and see the favorite count there. So we have our data in Tableau and rocking. And what we can do is I actually worked on this earlier and fixed the date on another file. Here and created a calculation to convert that weird date that we have in this to a much better one. So what I can do is paste that formula, and I'll show you what it looks like. In Tableau, you can take that date format and use a function called date parse, and the different parts of a date. This is just kind of a map to what each things were. So we had the day of the week, sun for Sunday, and they have the different letters that represent all of those in the date format. So you give it a little guide, and then it uses that to translate that string date to a usable date. And so I call that date fix. And now we can bring that in here, and now you have all of the dates. So everything's rocking. So we have Tableau data, and we're ready to go.